All right, everybody, welcome to the April 2026 post-conference review. Really excited to be here today. I've got three Cameron Brooks alum who about 30 plus days ago were sitting in your shoes getting ready to attend the conference. And they wanted to know where they were going to live, who they were going to be interviewing with, probably worrying if they were going to have gainful employment on the other side. And so they all did a wonderful job at the conference. And I picked them for specific reasons. Ryan, because he's going to talk. Scott, because he's got the best mustache that I think I've ever seen. And David, because I don't think I've seen anybody work harder in a study group in my entire time at Cameron Brooks. He really was kind of the ringleader on that. Now, everybody at the conference did well. I could have brought anybody, but these three gentlemen did a wonderful job. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to share a little bit about the conference, give you guys some statistics up front. I'm going to do my part for about 10 to 15 minutes or so, and then I'm going to turn it over to these three gentlemen. And you're going to ask them questions. I'm going to ask them questions. Really, I want them to talk and to share their experience. If you all have questions, what I'd ask that you do is put it in the Q&A chat. I've got my questions that I'm going to ask. They might give you guys some advice, or they might piggyback off each other. But if you got a specific question, drop it in the Q&A, and we'll make sure to get that answered. So with that being said, I've got some slides over here that we'll go through. So first off, my goals tonight are that you guys are well informed, that you're confident in your search strategy here in Cameron Brooks as your partner and your guide, and then ultimately that you get the opportunity to hear some real JMO success stories. Okay, and that's what we're looking to do this evening. My agenda: I'm going to start with statistics from the conference, talk a little bit about the economic landscape that's out there. I think this is an important one. There's a lot of doom and gloom and things out there when you read the news. However, we had 51 companies at the conference and 48 JMOs, and we averaged over 11 interviews on average per person, right? So companies are hiring. It's a great time to get out. I'll talk about through some sample positions, share some of the companies that attended, and I'll give you guys a sample interview schedule because I think people always like seeing that. And then we're going to turn it over to the alumni Q&A. All right, so conference recap here. All right, for April, we had 48 JMOs, each of them averaging a little over 11 interviews, so 11.3. There were individuals at the conference who had 8 interviews. There were individuals who had 13 interviews, right? If they were a little bit lower on the number of interviews, maybe that meant they were very focused on a specific type of career field. Maybe they were geographically a little less restricted, maybe due to a spouse or significant other. So the focus was on quality, though, not necessarily as much on quantity. In total, 540 interviews were conducted over a 2-day period on Monday and Tuesday. I love this stat, and I'm kind of waiting for it to change every conference, but it's always in line with about 68 to 72%. We call this the pursuit rate. The 70% pursuit rate means that was the average number of yeses across the conference. Okay, so basically, on average, if you're the average person come to the conference, you'd have 10 interviews and you'd be batting 700 on average. Basically, 7 out of 10 yeses. A yes simply means I want to go to the next round with you. We're interested if you're interested as well. Okay, so that number is always right around there. Companies attend the conference to give yeses, to hire, right? They're here to find talent, and so they want to give you yeses, right? We can talk a little bit more in our DPP sessions about what a no means and some common reasons for receiving a no. The average days to placement was 15 working days. So from the completion of the conference on Tuesday night to now, we're at 15 working days. So this process moves very, very quickly. Some people accept it in 9 days. Some people accept it in 13 working days. It just depends. Everyone's got a different, one hiring managers at the conference. 26 of them were Cameron Brooks alum who were directly the hiring managers. Every single company that attended the conference knew of Cameron Brooks through an alum, right? And so I love that stat. It's just it's a great stat because it really shows that companies know about you and that they're looking for you. And they're advocates of you as well, right? A lot of the alum come back and they hire. They could be 5 years. They could be, we had a CEO at the conference. We had 2 CEOs actually who were Cameron Brooks alum at the conference, from More Nanotechnology and from Kevin's Natural Foods. So I always like seeing that number. We talk about quality career conference. I just want to say that quality, very overall, this is probably, I was talking with Jeff and some other people here at the company, that I mean, every conference is amazing and I love it, but this is probably one of the best conferences I've ever been a part of. I don't know, there was something about it. I think it just has to go back to the companies. It's a good time in the economy right now. And every single one of the JMOs had an opportunity to work with, really just were able to build relationships with them. They were open to listen, they were open to learn, really had the growth mindset, and they were just great people to work with. And so another stat I like, every single candidate at the conference was pursued. There was not one person who came to the conference and blanked, right? Every single candidate was pursued. And every single person that went to the follow-up process did receive an offer. So that's good. That's good news. This next number, I hear sometimes people saying, hey, Brock, I want to go to the conference. I want to get as many offers as possible. Yes, I like that strategy. I think that's a good game plan, right? That's the point. But that number at this conference was a little over 2 was the average number of offers per candidate at the conference. Now, that number depends. Some people might have gotten 1 offer. Some people knew the company they wanted to go work for. They knew that right from the start and they were going to get an offer. And so they were ready to go move forward with that company. And they basically remove themselves from the rest of the process where they could have earned some more offers. I know there's individuals in this call who probably would have received more offers. And I know that for a fact if they had not accepted with their company. So I think at the last conference in January, we had over 50% of the conference was over 3 offers. So it's a good stat. CEOs, senior leaders, we had special programs created for Cameron Brooks JMOs. We'll talk a little bit about who David Tierney's going to go work for and Horace Mann, but companies creating roles, creating programs for their most complex needs. These are experienced hire positions. We call this complex, non-traditional recruiting. And so one thing I want to note here, and I say this a lot, this is not a job fair. Right? It's not a job fair where you're just going to walk around and you're going to go to a booth and you're going to get a flyer and you're going to talk to somebody, maybe hand them your resume and say, hey, let me know if you need anything. Let's connect on LinkedIn. You have a different starting point here. You go directly to hiring managers and decision makers, okay? Instead of applying online, warm referrals, etc. Now, what's funny is I believe every single one of you in this call had to apply officially online after the fact. Sometimes when you go apply, you'll see it's going to say 7 years of finance or business experience, 4 years of operations logistics experience, must be SIE FINRA Series 63 certified. None of you all here had to do that, right? That's the HR process. Those are the AI filters that generally speaking get, kick people out whenever you apply online, okay? And so just a different starting point. Let's talk a little bit about the economic landscape here. I think this one's important. I get asked this, and I get asked this question every single day. Is now a good time to get out of the military? Well, first I'd say, I want you all to go and listen to these 2 podcasts, episode 227, 234, with Chuck Alvarez, our CEO, and Joel Junker, our senior vice president. They kind of really talk about the importance of preparation right now. They talk about the economy. They really kind of quote that we're in an economy that's just like the new normal. And what is the new normal? I think it's an economy that has headwinds, it has tailwinds, it has uncertainty, but ultimately the new normal is it's an economy that will reward preparation and hard work, okay? And people who have give hats on and maybe not their get hat. And so, the question about is now a good time to get out, it always kind of makes me laugh for 2 reasons. And I understand why people ask it. I guess the most important reason is because I asked it too when I was getting out of the military, right? The concern's valid. If you look around, you read the Wall Street Journal, you read the news, the jobs reports, inflation came back and drove interest rates super high. Interest rates we haven't seen in a generation. We lived through the first global pandemic a couple of years ago. We had a little bit of a market crash after that. We've got new technology like AI reshaping industries, ongoing wars in the Middle East, political uncertainty at every level, tariffs. I mean, there's so much that's going on right now. But I think about what does this actually mean for you? Let's say that through every single one of these challenges, every single recession we've ever had in the history of Cameron Brooks since it's been around, every market correction, every pandemic, all the different wars, all the new technology that's been implemented and maybe been a disruptor, we have a very resilient economy right now. You guys go look at the latest JOLTS report. Hiring has been steady, more jobs added in the last couple of months. And I always love this fact too. From 1975 today, the S&P 500 risen at an average rate of over 12% per year. Through all of it, right? Which is remarkable, right? I think it tells you something about the economy. And you can't time the economy just like you can't time investing. And this is why I'm going there. Nobody can, right? So if you try to wait for the perfect moment to get out of the military or to apply to something, right, you're probably still waiting right now. If you think about investing, the people who stick to the sound principles of investing and are building real wealth aren't the ones who just jump in and out at the right time. They're the ones who stay disciplined, who lean in times of uncertainty, who double down. I mean, look at Warren Buffett, right? Go listen to Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. I think those are excellent people to listen to. And I think the career transition is no different here. I'm now convinced more than ever that as long as Cameron Brooks is around, we will always have a conference. I think that's a testament to the JMO. I think that's a testament to the alumni network. These three gentlemen who are probably going to come back and maybe a year, maybe a few years from now and higher, maybe 20 years. And if it's not a great time in the economy, the need for talent and the need for junior leadership is more important than ever. And so I just want to tell you guys right now, it's a great time to get out. Rely on your preparation. I don't want to say trust the process, right? Because I know I work here. I get that. But if you trust the process and you put in the work, you're going to show up to a conference and you're going to have opportunities to interview with great companies who want to hire you, who are great individuals. So let's just talk a little bit more about that. I also like, this book, 5 Patterns of Extraordinary Careers here. I took this out, I don't know, maybe it was in January. I was reading it on an airplane as I was traveling actually to Fort Benning, Georgia. And I sent this picture to a couple people in the company. And I've read this book before. It's actually in our reading program. I highly recommend it. But I love what it says. A successful career transition requires planning, practice, humility, hard work, discipline, ability to deal with disappointment, anger, frustration, maybe uncertainty, a willingness to see the best in yourself. I mean, what a better, interviewing is hard because you don't know necessarily where you stand with other people. And so you've got to stay positive, an eagerness to market yourself properly. I thought this was just a great picture from this book. And so some of the things I just said probably struck some chords with these gentlemen here as well. It definitely did when I got out of the military as well. Okay. Highly recommend it. All right, let's go through some companies by industry. So this is not all encompassing. This is not every single company that came to the conference. I did my best to try to break it out into some different industries. I'm going to give you one sentence on each, and I'm going to fly through this. What I think is helpful for you all is take this and start doing research on these companies on your own. Hey, what do these companies do? What products do they have? What services do they provide? How do they differentiate themselves in the market? Aerospace industry, top right. Four companies that came here. This isn't all encompassing, but ITT, $3.6 billion manufacturer of highly engineered components for aerospace, and industrial markets. That came from Cameron Brooks alum who's new there. Sky Harbor, they're a publicly traded aviation infrastructure company. Basically, they develop and operate these private hangars, campuses for business jets across the U.S. Textron, a subsidiary of Textron Incorporated, about $1.3 billion in revenue, and they specialize in unmanned aircraft systems, advanced marine craft, and then a lot of missile capabilities. TransDigm Group, aerospace company, producer of a bunch of highly engineered proprietary aircraft components. Every single military aircraft has a TransDigm product in it. I guarantee it. Medical and healthcare, really driving the economy right now. A very resilient industry to get into. Scott and Brian are both getting into that, and they'll talk a little bit more about that. But BlinkRx. They're a digital pharmacy platform. They've got about 100 to 250 million in revenue. And basically what they're trying to do is get prescription delivery to patients through partnerships within these pharmaceutical manufacturers quicker. Boston Scientific, just a wonderful company. That's where Ryan's going to work. I always say this too. My sister works there, so I've got a soft spot for Boston Scientific. They are basically a medical device company that specializes in a lot of different products, but about 2/3 of their revenue comes from cardiovascular devices and the rest from med-surg. And so they had 5 different hiring groups here at the conference. I only put it one company, but 5 different hiring groups across CRM, cardiac rhythm management, coronary therapies, and then electrophysiology. Eurofin Scientific, the world's largest testing laboratory network. They operate over 950 labs across food, environmental, pharmaceutical, clinical diagnostics. They were hiring at this conference specifically within their food testing division. Geomed, very neat company. They're a service disabled veteran-owned small business, founded actually by a Marine Corps veteran back in 2004. They basically work with VAs and they distribute medical and surgical supplies exclusively to VA hospitals and DoD medical centers. Globus Medical, they specialize in orthopedic medical devices, especially within the spine surgery, very fast-growing trauma and surgical robotics business. Jubilant Hollister Steer, they're a contract pharmaceutical manufacturer. Midmark Corporation, their COO, Rob Sackett, is a Cameron Brooks alum, but they're a $680 million privately held Ohio manufacturer founded in 1915. And they basically design and build these integrated equipment and workflow solutions for medical offices, dental, and vet practices. I was at the dentist this morning getting my teeth cleaned, and Midmark was in there. Midmark products were in there. I was sitting on a Midmark chair, actually, which is really neat. Industrial and heavy manufacturing, you got Caterpillar. They've been hiring a ton, just an bellwether construction and mining equipment company. Dare Corporation, they're the global market leader in high frequency vibrator screening machines for mining, oil, and gas drilling, and then civil construction. Interflex, publicly traded provider of natural gas processing, compression, and produced water solutions. You got Kaiser compressors, a privately held German manufacturer of these compressors. Myratech Corporation, they produce emissions reduction and acoustic control systems for these reciprocating engines for power generation, data center backup, oil and gas. So, that's a company that is really supporting a ton of this AI growth that's really driving our economy right now, whether it's AI building AI data centers. There's also an article about Caterpillar in the Wall Street Journal recently about how they've turned really their foundry into not just making these big engine blocks, but making a lot of the parts that go in these reciprocating engines, so that when companies and people go out and are building these data centers, they don't have to tie their power into the grid. They can just operate off of these reciprocating engines. And so very neat company. More nanotechnology, Symbotic, you can look them up. I got to talk about Corning. If you haven't listened to Wendell Weeks or read the Wall Street Journal, they are just absolutely crushing it. I wish that I had stock in them right now. But basically, they make the optical fibers that are powering all these AI data centers. They had two different hiring divisions at this conference. Linde, industrial gas company. Messer Americas, another industrial gas company. Tamco, building products. I can just keep going down this list, right? My encouragement to you all is to just continue to go and do research on your own, okay? So that's a little bit about some of the companies that came to the conference, some sample positions. I broke this out by career field. I think the first thing is this is just very broad, right? So your business analysis, I call them your program, your project, process leadership roles. Heavy in your analytical, finance, maybe procurement, project management. But HF Sinclair came for procurement specialist or strategic sourcing specialist role. Amcor for a marketing role. Amcor was also here for a sales role. USAA was back at the conference for a digital and technical product manager position. Role is here for a finance manager role. For B2B sales, I mentioned Boston Scientific, 5 different hiring groups, all within the sales organization. Amcor was here for an account manager role. They're a packaging company. We've got placed a ton of JMOs at Amcor, not just within sales, but within marketing, within operations. Horace Mann, which is where David's going to be launching his career, as Director of Territory Development. I didn't know whether to put this within sales or business analysis. We'll talk a little bit more about this company. It's very neat. It's kind of like sales leading to running your own business, but they provide financial services for educators and teachers. Associate Territory Manager for Zoll, that's where Scott's going to go work. They're within the cardiac rhythm management space. In Sky Harbor for a leasing associate. Engineering Management, Project Manager for More Nanotech. You see here One Stop Systems. This is a neat company. They're basically making ruggedized AI infrastructure equipment that we can put on our P8s, that you can put on autonomous vehicles, that you can put on submarines, right? Just go look them up. Very neat. They got a great hire from a former Navy nuke at this conference. Corning Optical, rotational engineering program, got a couple hires. What's neat about this is saw NVIDIA just committed about three plus billion to building more data centers and more infrastructure for these data centers. And Corning is kind of at the helm there. Derrick Corporation within the oil and gas industry, and you've got your team leadership roles here as well. Sample interview schedule, as you guys can see, this individual had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 interviews on Monday and had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on Tuesday. So 12 interviews at the conference. You can see this individual's breakdown. We started on Monday at 9:45, ended at 3:45, and then had 6 more interviews on Tuesday. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to get your interview schedule. We're going to build this. We got to deconflict it. This is a linear constraint-based problem, having 121 hiring managers schedules, 48 JMOs, and 500 interviews at the conference. We take into account time zones, all sorts of different things, okay? And so my colleague Jeff built a phenomenal program that basically runs this and spits it out. And he's basically got it where you're going to have almost an even number of interviews on Monday and Tuesday if you had an even number of interviews, okay? So very neat. There's a lot of work that goes into this. And so I just like showing you guys this because this is what it's going to look like. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to these gentlemen to start. Scott's going to kick us off. Maybe Scott, just tell us a little bit about your background, what you did in the military, and what you're going to be doing with Zoll, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm a Army logistics officer, Fort Carson, Colorado. I'm a first lieutenant. I've only been in for 4 years, and then I'm going to go to Zoll to be an associate territory manager for my first 9 to 12 months as a training year, and then I will be given the thumbs up and promote into that full-on territory manager position where I'm helping to implement a primary product called the Life Vest. It's a wearable defibrillator. So I'm working with cardiac care patients, working with people who've either experienced a heart attack or are at high risk of experiencing a heart attack.
Yeah, super neat. I love it. Thanks, Scott. We'll kick it over here to Ryan now.
Man, I have to go after that picture. That's a good picture. But no, like it says, Ryan Smith, I did just shy of 10 years in the Navy as a logistics officer as well, but we call it a supply officer in the Navy for any Navy types out there. I accepted an offer with Boston Scientific as a field clinical rec. So similar to Scott Hicks, the first year, 12 to 24 months, I'll be in that field clinical role, becoming a subject matter expert with the goal to grow into a territorial manager. And also similar to Scott, ideal in the, pacemaker defib, but instead of it being a wearable, it's something inside of you for life. But I'll pause for questions because like Brock mentioned in the beginning, I'm a talker, so I'm going to give the mic back and get ready for these questions.
I love it. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. David, over to you.
Yeah, these guys have some wonderful pictures. I'll make do with what I got here. So I'm an infantry officer based in Fort Polk, Louisiana, just recently promoted to captain, and I accepted an offer with Horace Mann as a director for territory manager. And so I'll be working with educators. This is a very long-term position. So I selected my territory, got my territory of choice, and I'll be building a huge book of business, which is what really excited me about this opportunity. And I would love to answer questions. Just like Ryan, I'm a certified yapper. So I'll pass it back over to Brock. Thank you for the introduction.
I like it. Wonderful. Thanks, guys. The way that I like to start this is I like to start kind of pre-conference, and whether that's preparation, what was going through your mind, how did you prepare, what was your search strategy during the conference itself, okay, and then post-conference.